I've always been a tech enthusiast, hooked on gadgets since I was a kid. When the glow of a computer screen felt like a portal to another world. Maybe it's because I grew up in the digital age, or maybe it's just how life is now. Everything's online, everything's automated, everything's connected. When I settled into my sleek Chicago condo, I couldn't resist outfitting it with the latest smart tech. Locks that responded to my phone, cameras streaming live feeds to my screen, and a system so seamless I could control it all from anywhere. No more fumbling with keys, no more wondering if I'd locked the door before heading out. It was the ultimate convenience, a sense of absolute control, a fortress of digital security. I could let delivery drivers drop packages inside while I was at work, monitor the entrance in real time, and check activity logs from halfway across the globe. It felt like living in the future, safe, secure, untouchable. That illusion shattered on a frigid Tuesday night in early December. The city outside was cloaked in winter's bite, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. I was sprawled on my couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, scrolling through my phone with a true crime documentary droning in the background. The narrator's voice was a low hum, barely registering as I flicked through social media. It was just another quiet evening, the kind where the world feels small and safe. Then my phone vibrated, a sharp buzz that cut through the stillness. I ignored it at first, assuming it was a spam email or a news alert. But it buzzed again, insistent, and this time I recognized the distinct chime of my smart lock app. I glanced at the screen and my heart skipped. Front door unlocked. The words stared back at me, cold and impossible. I hadn't touched the app. I was the only one with access. No roommates, no shared codes, just me. My fingers fumbled as I opened the app, the status screen confirming the lock was disengaged. A nervous flutter stirred in my chest, but I brushed it off. Tech glitches happen, right? Smart devices aren't perfect. I tapped the lock button, and from across the room, the deadbolt's metallic click echoed, reassuring me. I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. Then it buzzed again. Front door unlocked. My body stiffened. This wasn't a glitch. I tapped the lock button again, heard the deadbolt slide into place, and waited. Seconds later, another buzz. Front door unlocked. A cold prickle crawled up my spine, my hands growing clammy. I swiped to the activity log, my eyes scanning the entries. 3 unlock attempts in the past 2 minutes, none initiated by me. My pulse quickened as I grabbed my tablet from the coffee table, fumbling to open the security camera feed. The loading icons spun, each second stretching into eternity. My breath was heavy, ragged as the screen finally flickered to life. At first, the feed showed nothing but the empty porch, bathed in the dim glow of the streetlight. Then I saw him, a figure just beyond the camera's frame, barely visible in the shadows. A hooded man, motionless, his face obscured. In his right hand, he held a phone, its screen casting a faint glow. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stared, frozen. He lifted the phone slightly, and a moment later, my phone buzzed again. Front door unlocked. I leapt from the couch, adrenaline surging, and sprinted to the door. My hands shook as I manually twisted the deadbolt, the heavy thunk grounding me for a fleeting moment. I glanced back at the tablet. The man hadn't moved. He stood there, unnervingly still, like a predator sizing up its prey. I watched, paralyzed, as he finally turned and walked away, his figure dissolving into the night. Relief should have come, but it didn't. I stayed awake, eyes glued to the camera feed, checking and rechecking the lock. By morning, he was gone, but the dread lingered like a stain. Something compelled me to dig deeper into the activity logs. What I found turned my stomach. The unlock attempts hadn't started that night, they'd been happening for weeks. Always late at night, always when I was home. I'd dismissed the notifications as glitches, but they weren't. Someone had been testing my lock, probing my defenses while I slept just feet away. I called the smart lock company, my voice tight with panic. The technician on the line sounded skeptical. "That's not possible," he said. "Only an admin can unlock the door." I snapped back. "Well, someone did." Silence hung on, the line before he suggested resetting the system. I didn't just reset it, I tore the smart lock out and replaced it with a traditional deadbolt, the kind no hacker could touch. That night, I wedged a chair under the doorknob, a trick I hadn't used since I was a kid scared of monsters, but this monster was real. A week later, I was leaving work when my phone buzzed again. Front door unlocked. My blood ran cold. I wasn't home. I was miles away, and the smart lock was long gone. I called the police, my voice shaking as I explained. They reviewed the building security footage and found him, a hooded figure standing outside my unit at 2 a.m. No forced entry, no tampering, just a man who somehow walked inside. They never caught him. I moved out a month later, but the fear followed me. Every creak, every shadow, every buzz of my phone makes me wonder if he's still out there watching. I run a small business, so my life is a whirlwind of late nights and unpredictable hours. My wife, Laura, keeps a steadier rhythm, her 9 to 5, job anchoring our routine. Most evenings she's home when I stumble through the door, exhausted but grateful for her presence. That week, though, chaos had taken over. Deadlines loomed, meetings piled up, and somewhere in the blur I lost my spare house key. It wasn't a crisis, I still had my main key, but the thought of it floating around out there gnawed at me. I decided to call a locksmith to change the locks, a precaution to ease my mind. The locksmith arrived Tuesday afternoon in a plain white van. No logo, no branding. That should have been my first clue. His uniform was equally nondescript. A black polo and jeans, no name tag. He was polite, almost too chatty, cracking jokes about lost keys as he drilled out the old lock. "Happens more than you'd think," he said with a grin. I nodded, watching him work. Then he asked, "You live alone?" The question hung in the air, too casual, too pointed. "No," I said. "My wife's here." Laura was upstairs in her office, her presence a quiet reassurance. He nodded, like he was storing the information away, and kept working. The job dragged on, a simple lock change stretching into nearly an hour. He moved slowly, deliberately, his eyes darting around the room. When he finally finished, I paid him, and he left without a word. I locked the door behind him, double-checking it, but a nagging unease settled in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about him, his questions, his lingering presence. That night, at exactly 2 a.m., I jolted awake to a sound, a soft rattle from the front door. At first I thought it was a dream, but then it came again, deliberate and slow. My heart pounded as I lay still, straining to listen. The house was silent. No footsteps, no voices, just the faint jiggle of the handle. Then a click. My breath caught as I turned toward the bedroom door. It creaked open and a figure stepped inside. Tall, dressed in black, a ski mask hiding his face. In his hand, a gun glinted in the moonlight. "Don't," he said, his voice calm, almost mechanical. "Get up, slowly." I glanced at Laura, still asleep beside me, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding. My hands trembled as I obeyed, raising them in surrender. "Go to the bathroom," he ordered. I hesitated, my mind racing. "Now." His tone left no room for argument. I stumbled toward the master bathroom, my legs heavy, and he followed, the gun steady in his grip. "Wake her up," he said. I turned to Laura, my voice barely a whisper. "Laura, wake up." She stirred, blinking in confusion, then froze as her eyes landed on the gun. Her breath hitched, her face paling. "Get in the bathroom," the man repeated. I pulled Laura inside, shutting the door behind us. We heard the key turn in the lock, trapping us inside. His footsteps faded, then returned, accompanied by the sound of drawers being yanked open, cabinets rummaged through. Laura sobbed quietly, her body shaking against mine. I pressed my ear to the door, listening as he tore through our home. Our phones were gone. He'd taken them, leaving us cut off from the world. Hours passed, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of floorboards. Then nothing. The house fell eerily still, as if the world had stopped breathing. We stayed there, huddled in the dark, until a knock at the front door broke the silence. It was Greg, our neighbor. His voice, muffled but familiar. "You guys okay?" he called. I shouted that we were locked in the bathroom, and he raced upstairs to free us. When we stepped out, the house was in chaos. Drawers emptied, papers scattered, our lives violated. The front door hung open, a silent accusation. Greg called the police, who confirmed what I already suspected. No forced entry. Whoever broke in had a key. I told them about the locksmith, his strange questions, the unmarked van. They searched for him but found nothing. No record, no trace. We changed the locks again, installed cameras, motion detectors, and I started carrying a gun. But the fear lingers. Was he a random opportunist, or had he been watching us for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment? I'd lived in my Raleigh, North Carolina home for 4 years, a cozy suburban haven where neighbors waved and Halloween decorations lingered past Thanksgiving. Even when my husband traveled for work, I felt safe, cocooned in the familiarity of our quiet street. But looking back, I wonder if I was too complacent, blind to the eyes that might have been watching from the shadows. It was a chilly Thursday evening in late October, the air crisp with the promise of fall. My son Daniel was asleep upstairs, and my husband was away on a business trip in Atlanta. The house was still, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. Then, without warning, the kitchen went dark. The fridge's hum died, the microwave's display blinked out, and the coffee maker fell silent. I sighed, assuming it was the old wiring acting up again. It had happened once before, a minor annoyance. I wasn't about to fumble with the breaker, box in the dark, so I searched online for a local electrician. One listing caught my eye. Elite Electrical, boasting same-day service and glowing reviews. I called, and a man answered promptly. "This is Adam," he said, his voice smooth and professional. I explained the issue, and he promised to be there in 30 minutes. A white van pulled into my driveway 25 minutes later, unmarked, no logo in sight. It struck me as odd, but I brushed it off. When I opened the door, a tall, thin man in his late 40s stood there, wearing a plain blue work shirt. "Adam?" I asked. He nodded, offering a tight smile. "Power outage in the kitchen, right?" I let him in, and he got to work checking outlets and flipping switches with practiced ease. But then I noticed something unsettling. He was taking photos. Not just of the outlets, but of the doors, the windows, the hallway leading upstairs. My stomach twisted. "Why are you taking so many pictures?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. He paused, his fingers hovering over his phone. "Just for reference," he said, shrugging. He kept working, but the unease grew. I should have asked him to leave, but I didn't. 15 minutes later, he declared the job done, insisting on cash payment because the company's card system was down. Another red flag I ignored. As he left, I watched from the window, my breath shallow. He climbed into his van but didn't drive away immediately. He sat there staring at the house before finally pulling out of the driveway. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. At 3 a.m., a loud thud jolted me awake. My heart raced as I sat up, listening. Another sound, a soft shuffle like a chair being dragged downstairs. I grabbed my phone and opened the security camera app, only to find every camera offline. Panic surged as footsteps climbed the stairs, slow and deliberate. I bolted to Daniel's room, locking the door behind me, my hands trembling as I clutched him close. The doorknob rattled, then again harder. I texted my neighbor, Jessica. "Call the cops. Someone's in my house." The police arrived 6 minutes later, but the intruder was gone. The house was ransacked, drawers emptied, cabinets torn open, but the doors and windows were untouched, as if the intruder had a key. I told the police about Adam, the photos, the unmarked van. They searched for Elite Electrical but found no trace of it, no record of an Adam. The security logs showed the cameras had been disabled remotely at 2:58 a.m. When my husband returned, we packed up and moved within a month. I still think about that man, his calm voice, his lingering gaze, and wonder how long he'd been watching us. Babysitting was my go-to gig in college. Easy money for watching kids in safe suburban neighborhoods. The Petersons were my favorites. A kind couple with two sweet kids, Ella and Jackson, and a cozy Seattle home where the doors stayed unlocked during the day. That night, a warm Saturday in summer, they were out celebrating their anniversary. The routine was simple: dinner, a movie, and bedtime by 9 p.m. The house was quiet, the kids asleep, when I noticed a car parked across the street. Its engine was running, headlights off, just sitting there in the dark. At first, I thought it was a neighbor's visitor, but an hour later it hadn't moved. My stomach churned as I tucked the kids in, glancing out the window. Still there. When the Petersons returned around 11:15 p.m., I considered mentioning the car but held back, not wanting to seem paranoid. I pocketed my cash, grabbed my keys, and stepped onto the porch. The car was still there, unmoving. I climbed into my car, pretending to check my phone, and watched in the rearview mirror as it pulled out right after me. My pulse spiked. I switched lanes, it followed. I slowed down, it matched my pace. I turned onto a side street, it stayed close. This wasn't a coincidence. I couldn't lead them to my apartment, so I took random turns, circling blocks, hoping they'd lose interest. They didn't. At a yellow light turning red, I floored it through the intersection. The car behind me braked hard, and for the first time, it didn't follow. I turned down a residential street, pulled into a driveway, and killed my headlights. Waiting. Minutes passed. Nothing. I drove home, my nerves frayed but calming. At my apartment, I locked the door, deadbolt and chain, and stood still, listening. Then a soft knock. My heart stopped. Another knock, then a whisper. "I know you're in there." My body froze, my back pressed against the wall. "I saw you," the voice said again. I dialed 911, my voice barely audible as I explained. Through the peephole, I saw a hooded figure, too close to make out his face, as if he knew exactly where to stand. The operator told me to stay put. The knocking stopped, followed by footsteps moving toward the back patio, then silence. When the police arrived, he was gone, but the lock showed signs of tampering. A month later, I saw him again. I was at a coffee shop near campus when I felt eyes on me. Across the street, he sat in his car, staring. Before I could react, he sped off. I never babysat again, and I check my locks obsessively, haunted by the thought that he's still out there watching. If these stories left you uneasy, hit that like button and share them with someone who loves a good scare. Have a terrifying home invasion story of your own? Drop it in the comments or send it my way. I want to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another chilling tale. Your home is supposed to be your sanctuary, but sometimes the real horror is already inside. Stay vigilant, trust your instincts, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.